I talk to a lot of people every day in my psychotherapy practice. And recently, a person came to me and indicated that they were very stuck in their life and that they felt spiritually dry and didn't know what to do about that. They said to me, I don't think I'm a good Christian. And this person didn't want to feel this way. But for the past several years, this person actually indicated they had no felt intimacy with the Lord, and they still loved the Lord, still believed in the Lord, but it was more of an academic thing, some head knowledge that they have, and they didn't know what to do about it. They didn't feel like that they were a good Christian, and they asked in counseling session if I might offer them some assistance in that. So we talked. Now, just take a look at that simple little introduction and think of a very obvious. Here's a person who says to me, I have a problem and I want to present this problem to you. I call that the presenting problem. Or you can call that a reality in the middle of the journey. You could call it a journeying reality or a presenting problem. And I prefer sometimes to think of it as a journeying reality. They're journeying through life, and this is their reality that they face. And this person shared with me what their journeying reality, what their presenting problem was, and they made known that they had this particular problem. And they put it to me in the position. I welcome the position of being able to provide this person with counseling of a spiritual nature, to give them pastoral counseling, even though they were seeing me as a psychotherapist. I have the ability to wear both hats at once. Now, somehow, as this person tells me about their struggle, I am supposed to spear words back to them that actually provide care for their soul. Send them words back, right? What does that look like? What do I do? How do I think about the opportunity that this person presents to me? Why is it, as I hear people talk to me, and this person is just a very clear example of that? Why is it when so many people come to me to share their struggles with me, and so many times in my own life I feel that they've lost a sense of freedom? Why is there this sense that no longer can I move? No longer is my capacity to choose the third of the four capacities that we've been talking about, right? Why is that capacity to choose no longer present? Why do I not feel that I can choose? Of course, I can choose to order a cup of coffee or to have a Diet Coke or to order a sandwich, but when it comes to the really important things in my life, how do I choose to deal with my own interior world when my interior world is not the way that I desire it to be? And this person was struggling with that. And the question I want to ask in this presentation, in this lecture to you, is how do I think, as this man and this woman, this person begins to share their presenting problem, their journeying reality, where they might make known to me this capacity to choose that no longer feels alive within them. I'm stuck, I'm dry, I don't know what I can do that will make a difference. It's a very common problem that people have, and they'll come to you and they will ask you about these things. A person recently, another person recently called me and said, he said, my wife is unraveling. Can you fix her? There was a significant health problem in his family and significant problems with his children, significant problems with ministry. And I see a lot of pastors also. And his response to me was, I am afraid that I am losing control. I feel like I'm out of control. And Dan, I am frankly, literally afraid, not that I am going to punch somebody in the mouth or pull a gun and shoot somebody. I'm afraid that I'm going to do something I don't want to do. I'm losing control. What if we have the capacity to choose? What if that capacity to choose doesn't seem like a capacity anymore, that it seems like it's very, very diminished in our life? And Let me give you another example. A third person, a woman, said to me, I find it impossible right now to give what is best of me to my husband. I'm hurt. He's dealt with me in ways that have produced pain within me, and I know that I'm not giving him the best parts of me. And at some level, I want to. At some level, I don't want to push this person away and punish this person. But even when I'm talking with the Lord more deeply, I want to give him who I am as a woman, a godly woman. I want to bless my husband. I don't know how to do it. I can't seem to find the strength to do it. Wow. The conversation that presents like that is certainly a conversation that's inviting you to come in and care for another person's soul, inviting you to come in and be a pastoral counselor to them. Is a conversation that I believe must begin with the confidence that the Spirit of Christ is somehow on the move, stirring, doing something in that struggling person's journeying towards a vision. Here's a man who says, I'm thirsty. I don't have any satisfaction for my thirst. I feel dry. I feel barren in my spiritual life. Can I begin with the excitement of saying that right now at this point in this man's life, the Spirit of God is working? Maybe visibly, maybe I can't see it. Maybe he can't see it. Maybe we'll not see it working, the Spirit's working for many days or months or maybe years. I don't know, but the Spirit is working, it's present. And by faith, do I believe so that the vision that I develop for this person and their life is one that I can have the confidence that the Spirit is on the move towards something good. And maybe I get a chance, as the Spirit has called me into a caring relationship with this person, just to tag along behind the Spirit and whatever the Spirit of Christ is doing, whatever he wants to do. Do I believe that the Spirit is moving in this person's life who feels so spiritually empty towards becoming a whole person, towards a vision where he desires God more than anything else, where this appetite for God is actually stirred to the point where it's stronger than any appetite, where he is deeply persuaded as a person who has a capacity to perceive, where he's deeply persuaded that God can be trusted, that his desires are most strongly for God, and that there is a sense of freedom within this person's soul to move towards God and to accept God's movement towards him. Can I believe that the Spirit of God is moving this man towards meaningful spiritual maturity, towards real wholeness, with desires for God, with convictions about God, and with the freedom to move towards God? Well, that's my vision. But obviously, my next question, as I believe that this is maybe happening, is so what do I do now? What do I do? Well, as I have said to you many times before, I believe the very next thing that we need to do is to realize that we are going to get nowhere until we have the courage to look into this person's interior world. That's not just reserved for the psychologist, by the way. That's not just reserved for the counseling office. That's an opportunity that we have as Christians, as we care for one another. We need to capitalize on. And I think, if I can speak personally for a moment, that one of the deepest sources of my own loneliness is that so few people seem to have much of an interest in exploring my own interior world. And I wonder if I have much interest in exploring somebody else's interior world unless I'm on duty as a therapist. See, I am a Christian who just longs to see what's really happening in your life. So here's a man, a woman, here's somebody who tells me I am struggling and I don't have a sense of spiritual vitality in my life. I don't feel like I'm a good Christian. I don't have much excitement for spiritual disciplines or church attendance or whatever, but I believe that God is there and that God is real and Jesus is his son and he died for me, but I don't feel very close to that. What should I do? They say. I feel like I'm in quicksand and I don't know how to climb out of it. There's no foundation that I can put my foot on and push myself up. There's no send of volitional left in me whatsoever. And I have forming in my mind a vision for this person. I now begin to look and explore their interior world, and I ask maybe what's going on. I want to look beneath the waterline. I want to look beneath the visible reality that the person is experiencing on their journey into what? Well, as we start looking beneath the waterline, as we start looking at the interior world, what are we looking for? Well, a person who wants to provide biblical pastoral counseling makes a huge assumption as they begin to talk with another individual, with any individual. And the assumption is the person that you are talking to bears the image of God. We've said that before. And that means that they have the capacity to relate well to God, and they have the capacity to relate well to others. The capacity is there. But the person who's providing pastoral counseling goes beyond believing that the capacity which reflects the image of God is present. The person who's providing pastoral counseling also knows something else that is true, that this image bearer is a fallen, and therefore the capacity to relate well has been corrupted. It's been marred and scarred and broken and twisted and bent and banged apart. And that means the capacity to desire, the first element in the image of God that we have discussed in previous lectures, is the capacity. That capacity has been corrupted into a self-oriented demand for satisfaction. So when a man moves towards his wife, I can assume that this gentleman who tells me that he's dry spiritually, when I think about his relationship with his wife, I assume that his capacity to desire to give his wife the best that God has put within him has been corrupted into a self-oriented demand that his wife move towards him in a way that provides him with satisfaction. I just assume that that's what's going on. And that's what I'm going to find when I look beneath the surface of his life. If I am curious enough about this man, I am going to also look into the capacity to perceive. I'm going to draw on stories of his relational encounters. I'm going to maybe hear him tell me about how when he was 3 years old and his father left the family, when he was 10 and his school teacher embarrassed him in front of everyone, and when he was 15 and a girl turned him down for a date in front of his friends, when he was 22 and he got fired from his first job. By the way, I got fired from my first job when I was 15 or something like that. As I hear all of these relational encounters, I'm going to assume that this person has a capacity to perceive. I'm going to assume that their capacity to perceive as they look at life and as they draw conclusions has not been properly used. Why? Because that capacity has been marred and scarred and twisted and bent and not destroyed, but corrupted. That he's not moving through life believing it isn't God terrific. He's not believing this. At every moment, I know that God is in the suffering. He's not thinking that. Rather, there is going to be something in him that I'm going to be able to spot. Maybe at some point that will represent the fact that he's deceived by foolishness. The capacity to desire is corrupted into a demand for satisfaction. The capacity to perceive is corrupted into a deception by foolishness. I'm going to be looking now into his volitional capacity. And as I start exploring and ask questions and have a wisdom roadmap that guides me into thinking about this man's life or this woman's life, I'm going to find out that something has gone wrong with his capacity to choose. Rather than experiencing the vitality of freedom and the exhilarating reality of, I am a free man, I can choose to abandon myself to God. I can choose to sit in his presence and just receive all of the water that he wants to pour into my thirsty soul. I can choose to move towards my wife to bless her. I can choose to handle the conflict in my family with a God-reflecting strength. I can choose all of that. Rather than that, but somehow the capacity to choose has also been marred and scarred and bent and broken and corrupted into now the reality he feels. It's not the thrill of choice, but actually the loss of freedom. And I'm going to ask a question. It's going to start in my own head, in my own heart. I'm going to ask the question, why? Why do I feel that my sense of freedom is lost? Why, when I determine to go on a diet, does my sense of freedom seem to flee rather rapidly in the presence of the menu? As I sit in a restaurant, where is my capacity to choose to glorify God in the way I eat, to glorify God in the way I talk to my wife on the phone when she calls, when she's on a trip? Where's my capacity to choose to enjoy the exhilarating freedom of being all that God has called me to be? What's happened? That's our question. I want to explore that with you now for a few minutes. You see, the capacity to choose corrupted into the loss of freedom. To understand that, to understand what is happening with our capacity to choose, begin with this: your capacity to choose, my capacity to choose as bearers of a relational God's image, has two parts in it. There are two things that I can choose as a human being, two things I have designed to be able to choose. I have been designed with the ability to choose these things. The first thing is I can choose a goal. I can choose an objective, an aim. I believe that my desires will be satisfied by this particular direction. Then that direction becomes my goal. And if I've been feeling wonderful in my memory about a time when someone applauded me for performing well, then perhaps my goal is to get that same recognition again as an adult. I can choose a goal. That's the first thing. I can choose the direction that my life is going to head. And the second thing I can choose is a strategy. Here I am in the mall. You are here. I found where I am. I find a little red dot that says I am here. The mall is huge. There's many corridors. There's multiple floors and stores everywhere, many hallways, and I am here, and I can decide what I want to do to find the ice cream shop or the shoe store. That's my goal. My strategy, according to the roadmap, which the directory reveals, is to go down this way, about 10 stores, and hang a left and go another 12 stores and make a right there in front of J.C. Penney's, and go a little bit longer, and boom, there's the ice cream store. Or I can turn back and go the other way, and I'll find the shoe store. I can choose my strategy in my understanding of things. It's going to reach a goal. Now, I want you to consider what a fallen image bearer does. A fallen image bearer, one who's corrupted, and the capacity to choose has been, both with the goal and strategy for reaching the goal, has been corrupted, marred, and scarred, and broken somewhat. Consider what people do. And really, this is all of us. This is me. This is you. This is my friend who feels spiritually dry. Consider what people do who are not fully in touch with their appetite for God. Consider what people do who are aware of desires that fall short of the deepest, most important first desire. Recall when we spoke about the desires, right? Of convenience and importance and necessity. The deepest desire of my heart is for God, because I bear his image, and I'm a dependent being who draws life from God. Therefore, my deepest desire is for God, just as the deepest desire of a fish, I guess, is for water. Suppose that I'm out of touch with that. I'm not conscious of that. I'm not aware of that. Suppose I am aware of only of my desire for importance. Suppose I am aware only of desires that matter, but are not absolutely the core and most essential necessary. I have a desire to have my husband respond to me, my wife respond to me, my friends want to spend time with me, a certain job, a certain impact, etc. Suppose I'm aware of only my desires of importance and not my desire of necessity, then what happens at the point is that the desire of importance, if they are what I am most in touch with, and if I am out of touch with the deepest desire within me, the necessary desire for God Himself, then those other desires, those desires that are important, they begin to feel essential. And what is truly a desire for necessity is utterly ignored. And a desire that is important, yes, right? We're not saying that these are bad desires, but only that they're getting in the wrong position. Desire that's important becomes a central ruling passion of my life. I begin treating it as though it were a desire of necessity. If I perceive life foolishly, if I'm out of touch with my deepest passions, then that's what's going on. That's what's going to happen. And I'm going to start pursuing goals that are not essential. But if I am going to mistakenly believe that they are, I'm going to head down a wrong road and I'm going to be hurt in some way. Let me sketch that very, very simply for you. Let's go back to our image of the mall. Let's assume that here at the mall, where the gentleman is he's feeling spiritually dry. He's not feeling alive. He's not feeling vital somewhere deep down inside of him. And I have a discernment to recognize this. I might be able to discern that he's moving towards a goal that really is not a fundamental goal, but he thinks it is. The goal is then going to seem to him as a matter of life. It's a matter of death. It's not going to feel like a choice. It's going to feel like some imposed requirement. And then he's going to figure out a strategy as a volitional thinking being, a strategy which he believes is going to be able to reach the goal that he assumes is necessary. My friend who felt stuck in his spiritual walk, who didn't know what it meant to exercise freedom in his relationship with God or with others for that matter, told me the story of his background a little bit. And he said that when he was 11 years old, his father had abandoned him. His father left the family and really had never really seen or heard of his father much since that time. When he was 11 years old, as he had heard the story told by his mother and pieced together a few facts, apparently what happened is during the time when the boy was 11 years old, his father, went into some significant financial reverse, if you catch my drift. And he felt very threatened by that loss of money. He felt like a failure and just didn't want to face how weak of a man he was. And so he assumed that the burden of responsibility for his wife and children. So he just took off. He just fled. He just ran and he just left his family and abandoned everyone. I want you to go inside that 11-year-old boy's interior world for a moment. This is my client now, you see. He's not 11, he's a man, but I want to go inside his 11-year-old self, if you will. My friend with whom I'm wanting to do pastoral counseling with, he says, I'm spiritually dry and I don't know what to do about it. That's what he says to me. And I want to provide counseling to him. And I start to thinking about his interior world and I start hearing him tell the stories. And I think about him as an image bearer who has the capacity to choose. And I think, what would happen to this boy when he was 11 years old and he went through that kind of pain? That's real pain. That wasn't the design that God had for that boy. That boy was designed to be loved by his dad and to have a strong father enter his life and believe in him for as long as that father lived. The father failed. He moved away. He ran from the family. I would suggest that among a lot of other things that we could think about, that a deep conviction, this image-bearing boy with the capacity to perceive, is going to form a deep conviction. It's going to perceive something. And a deep conviction that he might be expressed this way: trusting anybody is risky business. If I were to give myself to Dad for the first 11 years, Dad was a swell guy. We played catch in the backyard. He gave me time. He gave me a ball game. He tucked me in at night. He was a nice man. I loved my daddy, and I gave myself to him. And I've learned that when you give yourself to people, when you risk real involvement, the result is going to be pain. I think that I want to develop a goal to never feel that way again. You see, I'm in the mall and I want a better life, and I experienced my father, and I don't want that kind of pain I felt from dad. What's my strategy? This 11-year-old mind is not even thinking consciously, it's subconsciously. It's coming up with a strategy. I can choose a strategy that reaches the chosen goal, and that is that I will never feel that way again. As I perceive the world, as I enter my world with deep desires for certain things to be given to me. And as this man's story unfolds, he told me that after his father left, and of course he grieved very hard with the family that seemed to be torn asunder by that move, but he discovered that after a couple of years with his father having been gone and apparently never to return, which is what happened, that he became very competent in school, became very able to do well, and in eighth grade he told a story. And as an adult, he told the story with tears coming out of his face. In eighth grade, he performed particularly well for a certain school teacher, a male school teacher, about the age of his father. The father figured the school teacher moved towards the boy with profound recognition, applauding him, and he felt great. Because you see, this boy wanted to attach to an older father figure, which had been ripped away from him. And now the school teacher is giving him that kind of attention because he performed very well. And now he has a clear idea of what he's after, a better life from his achievements without risk. And in order to achieve certain things, he's saying to himself, I have discovered that I have resources to think well. I'm that kind of person. I can think well. I can perform well academically. And I've discovered that I have resources to think well and to perform certain academic milestones. I'm able to do very well academically. And all of a sudden, his strategy includes sharing a little bit of his heart with anybody, but performing very, very well all the time. I want you to catch a very important point. When somebody is pursuing a lesser desire, none of us would be critical of this young man for wanting to perform a way that he gets applause. We're not critical of that. That's not an unholy desire, but when that desire of importance becomes central, the driving force of a person's life, a ruling desire in their life, that boy's becoming an idolater. And that boy is moving towards something that he perceives as his deepest desire. And he feels like this desire to perform and to get recognition academically is something which has to happen. It becomes a desire of necessity in his life, in his perception, you see. And whatever he does feels essential, and his sense of freedom is lost. He becomes a slave to what he perceives he must be and become, to whatever strategy he perceives has a chance of helping him to reach the goal. The man is now a slave. He's in bondage, and he has lost his sense of freedom. You and I have the capacity to choose. But if in our foolishness we wrongly understand what our deepest desires are and pursue a lesser desire as our central desire, we will lose the thrill of being free, our capacity to choose. I want to spend just a few minutes in talking about the fourth capacity of an image bearer. Here's the fourth capacity. You and I not only have the capacity to desire, the capacity to perceive, the capacity to choose, but we also have the capacity to feel. We have the capacity to experience emotions, to feel happy and glad and worried and scared and 1,000 of other emotions, all with their nuances that we experience every day. We have the capacity to feel. And that really is what makes life quite rich. And God's intention in giving us the capacity to feel was to bless us. But for many of us, the capacity has turned into a curse, you see, because the capacity to feel has been corrupted into what I like to call a requirement that we no longer face our dependency. Our capacity to feel has been corrupted into a denial of our dependency. Let me explain to you for a moment what I mean. If you and I are healthy people, if we're whole people pursuing God with the deepest desires of our hearts and perceiving his goodness and moving towards glorifying him and finding strategies that God has equipped us to employ to please him, to glorify him, to reveal him, then we're going to feel certain things, a lot of things. But central to what we're going to feel, if we're healthy human beings with the capacity to feel, in our dependency on God, we are going to feel a certain groaning, inward groan. We're going to feel an incredible desire to be out of this world and into heaven, because this is not our natural environment. This is not what we are designed to be. We are designed to be in perfect community. We never have that here on earth. We have glimpses of it, but we're going to experience a certain sadness, a certain groaning. We're also going to experience deep hope. We're going to experience an anchor in the middle of all of that that's hard, and say something like, yeah, we're groaning here, but we know it's coming. The best is yet to come. There'll be groaning, but there'll be hope. There'll be joy, but not without sorrow and not without struggle. But there'll be joy that says, in the middle of this world, I am free to worship God and serve others. And that's what I was designed to do. And in doing so, I really do experience a deep level of joy and satisfaction and fulfillment. That's what a healthy person feels. But what do you and I feel? Because we're not very healthy, are we? Well, if we demand a better life, and as volitional thinking beings, we choose the goal of achievement without risk or controlling other people so they can't hurt us. Whatever the goal is that we choose, and then we begin to strategize how to reach that goal, that we think that our life depends on it. When we choose a wrong goal, one of the three things can happen. Our wrong goal might be experienced as uncertain. This man goes into his family. The man goes who was abandoned by his dad, who's looking for the better life of achievement and getting recognition without being intimate, you see. He's not really sure of how this is going to work. Is his wife going to applaud his business success without his being involved very often? Is she going to be able to achieve certain things? Is he going to be able to achieve those things and get recognition that he desires? You see, this is the strategy he learned to cope as when he was in 8th grade. Is his goal guaranteed, or is his goal a little bit uncertain? And if his goal is uncertain, then there's going to be a basic anxiety in him. Uncertain goals produce anxiety. Will it happen? I don't know. I can't make it happen. I can't count on God to make it happen. There really is profound uncertainty, and I'm very scared. Uncertainty, uncertain goals, anxiety, it's all present. What actually happens in his marriage, of course, as you could easily predict, is that he moves into his marriage and worked too many long hours, made lots of money, and his wife was thrilled with the money for a while, but after a while, she responded by saying, I wouldn't mind having a little bit more of you. And rather than getting the recognition and applause he wanted, his wife blocked his goal. It wasn't a recognition and applause, it was legitimate criticism. What happens when your goal, a goal upon which you believe your entire life depends, is blocked? Well, he got mad. Blocked goals lead to anger. And there's a third kind of goal that sometimes develops in our lives, and we have a wrong goal other than glorifying God. When our goal is something other than on which we believe our life depends, the goal becomes one that is unreachable. We just can't seem to do enough to make it happen. We try to be the best parent we can be. Our kids still don't turn out right. We try to be the best husband we know how to be, and our wives don't respond. The best Christian we know how to be, and God doesn't come through and give us an encounter of his presence. when we have an unreachable goal, we end up with self-hatred. Uncertain goals, anxiety, blocked goal, anger, unreachable goal, self-hatred. I'll tell you that again. Uncertain goals produces anxiety. Blocked goals give us anger. Unreachable goals, self-hatred. Folks, you and I have a marvelous capacity, each one of us, to pretend that we don't feel as bad as we do. Each of us has a unique capacity to hide our feelings beneath business, television, movies, sexual pleasure, substances, all sorts of things that help us pretend that we're not dependent on God for life. We're moving in the wrong directions, but we don't have to pay the emotional consequences because we can pretend the consequences really aren't there, but they are. We're image bearers with the capacity to choose and the capacity to feel. We're image bearers with the capacity to desire and a capacity to perceive. The Lord God has given us all of these capacities so that we might relate well with Him and with others. And we've squandered the opportunity. What does that look like? What can you do as a pastoral counselor with other image bearers as you sit with them and begin to talk about their journeying reality? They are image bearers, just like you and I, who squandered the opportunity that God has given us to relate. Well, here we are at the end of our course, the last lecture here. And I want you to be thinking about all of these things that we have spoken of. Let it be in your mind as you enter into really good helping conversations with other people. You don't have to fix them. You're not there to solve all their problems. You're not a social worker. You're the asker of really, really good questions. You're looking to see how the Spirit is moving and to get them to see also, to get them to want to desire the most necessary thing, to rest in. I remember Matthew 11, where Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. You want to see, you want a vision for the people you talk with, that they find them resting in the Lord's care, that they are sorting out their desires, and they're moving towards the thing that's most necessary. And that's how you help them form as Christians and leave behind many things and heal from other things. So with all of these things that we've talked about in this class, you've just really, touched the tip of the iceberg, right? This is an introduction to pastoral counseling. But I do hope it will help you very much to have wonderful conversations that help people grow closer to Jesus. With that, I say amen, and I say, please enjoy this week and next week as you move into the final week of the final exam and your final project. I look forward to seeing your videos that you send me in your final project. Until we meet again someday, God bless you. Bye-bye.